Hey, Shalom, guys. Welcome to another episode of Messiah and the Feast. Today, we will be looking at the Passover or Pesach and showing how the Messiah relates to this holy day. So, we first find this in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 4 through 5, and this is what it says. These are the appointed times of the Lord, the holy convocations, which you shall proclaim at the times appointed for them. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at twilight, is the Lord's Passover. So the festival of Passover begins the cycle of the annual festivals on the 14th day of the month of Nisan. Now the sages say, quote, in Nisan, our forefathers were redeemed from Egypt, and in Nisan, we will be redeemed. So Judaism considers the festival of Passover as the prototype for the final redemption. Quote, the Messiah who is called first will come in the month that is called the first month. Exodus Rabbah 15, Cliff Note Leviticus Rabbah 30:16. Now, this explains why we look for Elijah the prophet in the month of Nisan to come and herald the appearance of the Messiah. On the 14th day of the month of Nisan, the children of Israel in Egypt slaughtered their Passover lambs and applied the blood to the doorposts of their homes. The festival of Passover commemorates that event with an annual sacrifice of Passover lambs in the temple on the 14th day of the month. That night, as the 15th day of the month began, the children of Israel ate the lamb with bitter herbs and unleavened bread. That night, God rescued them from Egypt and told them to keep the festival of Passover as a remembrance of their salvation from bondage and slavery. The Passover, however, was more than just a remembrance. As one of God's appointed times, the Passover foreshadowed the work of the Messiah. Now, the annual ritual of sacrificing the Passover lambs foreshadowed Messiah's death. He died on Nisan 14, the day of the annual lamb sacrifice. The apostles compared him to a Passover lamb, like the children of Israel who took refuge from the destroyer under the blood markings of the Passover lamb. Believers take refuge under his blood. Now, the Romans crucified Yeshua on Passover. At the time when the Jewish people slaughtered their Passover lambs in remembrance of their great salvation from Egypt, Yeshua hung on a cross or stake and died. The text of Leviticus fixes the appointed time for the Passover sacrifice at twilight on the 14th day of the first month. Now, in Second Temple Jewish practice, interpreted the Hebrew words ben ha'abrim for twilight to indicate mid-afternoon. In the days of the master, the people slaughtered their Passover lambs in the temple at mid-afternoon during the 9th hour. This is in the Mishnah Pesachim 5:1. Now, according to the Gospel of Mark, the master died during the 9th hour of the day, Mark 15:34-38. Now, this means that Yeshua breathed his last at the same hour that the Passover lambs were being slaughtered in the temple. Now, this is no coincidence, ladies and gentlemen. This is how the appointed times work. They are God's appointed times for doing business. They are his appointed times for the work of redemption. They teach us about the work of Yeshua. The annual appointed time of Passover pointed forward to the cross or stake, as if Israel had been annually rehearsing the events of the Master's death for 1,400 years before the actual fact. Perhaps this explains why Paul told the Corinthians, quote, Messiah, our Passover, also has been sacrificed. 1 Corinthians 5:7. Now, the festival liturgies of Passover also hint toward the resurrection of the dead. For example, in the synagogue, we pray a special petition called the Prayer for the Dew on the first day of Passover, marking the end of the rainy season in the land of Israel. The prayer for the dew is filled with allusions to the resurrection of the dead. Moreover, on the Sabbath that falls during the week of Passover, we read a special Haftorah portion from Ezekiel 36, Ezekiel's vision of the valley of dry bones. Hasidic teachings also consider the appointed times to function as blueprints for the future redemption and the coming of the Messiah. They are shadows of things to come. The Hasidic teacher Rabbi Uzel ben Zavi Haresh Misiels taught that each of the festivals celebrates a historical event and a future element of the final redemption. Moreover, each of the festivals combine both physical joy and spiritual joy. The physical joy connected with the agricultural cycle in the land of Israel, and the spiritual joy derived from celebrating the redemption. In the following discourse here, Rabbi Uzel connects the festival of Passover with the future resurrection of the dead. This is what he says. The festival of unleavened bread brings both physical and spiritual joy by celebrating the past, the time of our freedom from Egypt when we were redeemed. The redemption of our fathers brought a physical redemption from servitude and a spiritual redemption from the impurity of Egypt. You shall rejoice at that time because the joy of the Passover season comes in the month of Aviv, after the rainy season has passed, when all the works of creation have been renewed, and it is as if God has created a new world. This corresponds to the resurrection of the dead, when all that is in the world will rejoice simultaneously, both physically and spiritually. Ultimately, the Holy One, blessed be He, will work miracles and wonders for us in this month as He did with our fathers at this time. As it says, quote, as in the days when you came out of Egypt, I will show you miracles. Micah 7:15. The resurrection of the dead will ultimately occur in this festival, like a day of joy for all the creatures of the world. The Holy One, blessed be He, will be raised from the dead during the festival. And this is why we read in the Haftarah portion about the resurrection of the dead in Ezekiel 36 on the Sabbath during Passover. Wow. How awesome is that? So not only does Passover show us how Messiah will ultimately die for us, but also it shows shadows from the liturgies, from the synagogues, and from the rabbis and sages themselves that there will be the resurrection, which we see so much in the New Testament, in the Brit Hadashah. Please like, share, subscribe. I hope you guys are enjoying this series so far, and I hope you're learning something new. I will see you on the next one. Shalom.